Welcome back to this 283 350 Chris Craft Marine build. I wanted to add this extra bit of video just to provide additional information with regards to the timing and setting up the valve train according to Chris Craft. So I'm going to put a link in the description to another channel that I think is a great channel, and I follow it closely, VintageIron, and he has a very simple procedure to adjust the valve train on a flat tappet hydraulic cam setup. So we already talked about on the Chris Craft engine, number 8 on a small block Chevy is actually number 1 on the Chris Craft's marine motor. And of course that's at the flywheel end, which obviously is flywheel forward, the front of the engine on the Chris Craft. We already talked about, I already had 0 top dead center figured out. I knew that because I had the lifters in, and I also knew that the Chris Craft flywheel only goes on one way from the bolt pattern that you see. So I already knew that I was on firing top dead center there. I put the front housing on with its pointer pointing down, and I marked the 0 degree location on the flywheel. Just used a little Dremel tool and gave myself a nice little mark there. I also then basically used this like a degree wheel, figured out the circumference of the wheel, and just did a little bit of math and was able to mark my 90-degree positions around the wheel, around the flywheel. And then I gave myself marks for 5 degrees before top dead center, 12 degrees, and 28 degrees. And I'll use those for timing the engine. But with regards to the valve train, I kind of made a chart here that kind of keeps it pretty simple. Excuse the crude drawing here, but basically it's the same as small block Chevy. It just starts in a different location. So you can see here that, this is Chris Craft number 1. That's small block Chevy number 8. When you look at, now this is the reverse rotation engine I'm working on. I'll be doing the same thing on the standard rotation. But number 1 is number 8, and just so forth. 8 is 1, 7 is 2, and so forth. So when you watch the VintageIron video, you'll see he finds the first cylinder, which is number 1 on a small block Chevy, rotates the engine, make sure it's on the firing position, and then adjust those valves accordingly, and then just goes down the firing order. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing, and I already verified that, say I'm on number 1 Chris Craft 283 here, and that's number 8 on small block Chevy. The next one to fire is number 8, which is number 1 down here, okay? And so when I turn the engine 90 degrees, here's my dot. I'm gonna turn this counterclockwise because this is the rotation, and that will be up on the number 8 Chris Craft firing order, which I already verified. Put my thumb over the spark plug hole that's making compression, and I adjust those valves, and I just work my way right down the firing order. But you can see that the way they correspond, it's all the same. They just start in a different position for the Chris Craft Marine motor. So I'm going to follow that procedure, very straightforward, and follow that video where basically you get 0 lash, up and down motion, 0 lash, and then half a turn. And then your hydraulics are, your hydraulic lifters are set with a preload, and you don't have to mess with them. And he prescribes, some people, there's all kinds of discussion about pumping them up and soaking them in oil and that kind of thing. He doesn't do that. I didn't do that. I simply lube them. I used the driven cam assembly gel, which I highly recommend that. That stuff's amazing. It just comes out like a jelly, but it does not drip or come off. So the cam is all done with that. And so on the bottom of the lifter, I put the driven gel, then I just oiled the lifter and slid it in, and then I just used Moly assembly lube, Stay Lube, engine assembly lube for the top of the lifter here, and the rocker arm assemblies and everything, got those well lubed up. So those should be good for break-in. So that's pretty much the valve procedure of setting that up. Then I'll leave the engine back on number one, top dead center. So when I assemble everything, I'll know exactly where the engine's sitting. Hopefully that helps. Okay, in this section, I'm gonna bring everything up to date. We kind of left off talking about the flywheel and the timing. I went ahead and those grooves that I made, I actually color coded them with just some modeler's paint. So I have 0 in white, and you can see 5 and 12 degrees in yellow there. I have prepped and painted my front housing. Flywheel is on and torqued to 60 foot-pounds. I'm using all new bolts and hardware everywhere. We went ahead and assembled the exhaust manifolds. I'll talk about that in just a second. Basically, we've got new rubber mounts. Most of these parts I got from Hinkle, which is a great resource. I'm figuring out my new runs for the remote oil filter, and we'll take that on at a later date. New stud here for the alternator mount. Went ahead and did the timing and everything. The valve train adjustments, and got that done. A little bit about the intake manifold. This is, as we talked about before, the low-rise aluminum intake, hard to find. For this particular application, I'm going to be using the Edelbrock 1409 carburetor versus the original Ford Jet. So I've blocked off this particular passage, which is a 3/8 MPT with a plug. I've also blocked off this particular one, taken out all the studs, chased all the threads. Good tip is this particular, the oil fill, is just pushed down into this manifold, and it can have a tendency to weep oil. So it's pretty easy just to knock that out from underneath, and then reinsert that and JB weld it in there, so it's never going to leak or get loose. So that the manifold is pretty much ready. I am going to be doing a treatment on the bottom of the manifold. These particular manifolds, this one's in really nice shape, but they're typically found to have been blown out because of the exhaust gases going into this bottom chamber. This one's in good shape, but I'm going to be putting a coating on this and baking a coating on that's going to seal it up. And I'll cover that in another video. Also, we'll be blocking off these exhaust ports with a particular intake manifold gasket. We'll cover that as well when I get to doing a final install here on that. With regards to the exhaust manifold, so we got those from Hinkle, all pressure checked and vatted and very nice shape. I chose to replace the original back main water housing here, water part. I don't know the exact name for that. The originals are really problematic. They get very rusty, and basically just, the old cast iron is very questionable. These are very, very nicely machined. They are a bit pricey. They are expensive, but felt like it's a critical component to the whole water system. I want these to last, and I never want to have to worry about them. So I bit the bullet and went ahead and purchased all new of those. To put the exhaust manifolds together, obviously the gasket sets came from Hinkle, but I've used a couple of particular things here. I used the Permatex Surface Prep. I chose to use the Permatex Anaerobic gasket maker here just to minimize the potential for any corrosion between these different metals. I'm using stainless steel hardware, and so I'm judicious about using my anti-seize. I talked about the difference when you put stainless into aluminum. This is the copper version to put stainless into stainless, stainless into steel, or stainless into brass or bronze. And so all of that has been put together, torqued up to 20 foot-pounds, which is a typical recommended torque for a 3/8/16 bolt. I chased all the threads with a tap to make sure everything was clear before I assembled everything. So these are basically ready to finalize and paint before they would go on for final assembly. Replaced most of this, most of the water hardware. Got these from McMaster Car. They match the originals. And this is typical street elbow, 45 elbow, which isn't exactly the easiest to find here. But that way everything is new, and it will be going back without any kind of problem. So in the next series, we'll probably catch up where I have the rear housing on. I'll have the special cam gear off the back of the cam installed. We'll talk about that. Have that rear housing on, and we'll be approaching kind of the next steps of buttoning up the back end. My transmissions, which are being done by Harpus Marine in Wilmington, California. Those should be done in a couple of weeks. So this gives me some time to get a little farther on this motor and then jump to the starboard motor and standard rotation motor, get that completely up to where this motor is, and I'll do both transmissions at the same time. Hope that helps, and talk to you soon.